All right, everybody, welcome to the 6th episode of the podcast. Let's just jump right into it. So college. College is that experience that everybody has that's very, very different for each person who experiences it. You know, some people really, really love it. Some people end up hating their experience. Some people kind of had a take it or leave it mentality when they talk about their college experience. You know, it was just something they had to do to get some things done, and it is what it is. You know, if they could do it again, it's kind of like it's up in the air. It doesn't really matter. For me, my college experience was pretty much me learning that I didn't know ish. I'm trying to stop using profanity in this podcast. I really didn't know ish. It doesn't even sound good. I want to just say the real word. It sounds so much better. Like, if y'all don't know, I like to cuss, man, but I'm trying to change. I really like to cuss, especially the hard words, because you can say them with conviction. They sound so good when you say them. But anyway, I didn't know ish. I didn't even know enough to not know what I didn't know. That's my experience at Howard. I didn't know enough to not know what I didn't know. And so I learned that the hard way. And the reason that it becomes so funny looking back is because coming out of high school, you couldn't tell me that. I thought I was the ish with everything because I did so well in high school. I finished towards the top of my class. I was 18th out of 581. I was the student body president. I was, I think, the co-captain on the dance team. I had the theater thing going. I had the track thing going. I was a part of this really big campaign to get this levy and bond passed. And in Washington State, taxpayers vote on a levy and bond for the school district. So the levy pretty much ensures that teachers and stuff get paid. The bond pretty much ensures that your schools get renovated and get rebuilt and stuff like that. And so the levy and bond had failed the year before, and we really needed it to pass, or otherwise, you know, my high school wasn't going to get renovated. And at the time, my high school needed a renovation because it wasn't built properly when it was built in the 80s. And they were pretty much saying, listen, if y'all have another big earthquake, your high school is not going to exist. So, you know, we did this big campaign, and then that passed. And the campaign was pretty much getting people who were 17 but would be 18 before the election to register to vote. And so pretty much the levy and bond passed by a hair, and literally if it wasn't for those 17-year-olds that were voting, that thing would have never passed. So it's kind of cool when I go back home and I drive past my old high school and I'm like, yeah, y'all got all this because of me. Like, that's how I feel in my head. But anyway, you know, so high school was a great experience. You know, things were just really great. Social life was cool. I kind of got along with everybody. To be honest, I don't think I was the popular kid in school. You know, I was popular, but I wasn't popular like all the girls were trying to sleep with me or nothing like that. It wasn't even anything close at all. I was, because, you know, I was built like a freaking 12-year-old, so nobody was looking at me in that realm. But, you know, I was cool with everybody, and as a matter of fact, even the kids that low-key fit the stereotype of the kids that would shoot up the school, I was friends with them too, just in case, you know, for some insurance, just in case they wanted to shoot up the school, they would remember I was nice to them. And hell, I had a car, so if they needed an escape route, I got them. You know, I'm not trying to assist the assailant that just shot up everybody, but, you know, just for the sake of not killing me, listen, do you need a ride to the airport? I can take you to your mom's house where you want to go. Like, high school was great. So when it came to college, I just knew that I was going to get to college and kill it. Plus, I was excited that I was going to Howard, of all places. You know, Howard was going to be that place. And in this podcast, I'm going to talk about my freshman year. There's no way I can possibly talk about all of my Howard experience in one episode because, hell, that was 4 years of my life plus a summer. And so I'm going to kind of branch this Howard series out through the span of a few episodes. I don't know if they'll be back to back because I don't want to Howard you guys to death. I still want to talk about some other things. But anyway, in this episode, we're going to talk about my freshman year. So going back to what I was saying, I was super excited. I was hyped to go to Howard. You know, the idea of going to a school where pretty much everybody looks like you, I thought was the coolest thing because I had never even heard of an HBCU until I was a junior in high school. I never heard of Howard. I never heard of none of these schools. I had a friend that was, you know, very into the HBCU thing. Their parents were Greek, and hell, I didn't know anything about Greek life either. And so they invited me to this HBCU college fair in Seattle, and we went, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, oh God, I have to go to one, because in my head, the only thing that I could even think of that would have been an HBCU was Atlanta A&T from Drumline, and then I learned that wasn't even a real school. So I got embarrassed at the the expo tables because I'm over here looking for Atlanta A&T, and you know the North Carolina A&T table was like, that was our band. We just, you know, it's not a real school, young man. It's not a real school. So anyway, I thought HBCUs would be such a cool thing because it was like, wow. Thinking back to my high school experience, you know, I grew up in this nice little town called Spanaway, Washington. In my high school, by the time I graduated, there were, I think it was about 1,800 students there. And then of those 1,800 students, about 200 of them were black. And then everybody, you know, you had a mix of a bunch of different other groups. So, you know, you had a Pacific Islander population, you had an Asian population, you had a Latino population, you had a Native American population, and you had a bunch of white kids. And so for me, at that school, pretty much every black person who went to my high school, we all knew each other and got along because there was only so many of us. So in my head, I was like, this would be cool. I go to this high school with like 200 black folks, but imagine, going to one with 11, 12, 13,000. Even at that time, I was like, how am I going to be friends with 13,000 people? Goodness, that's going to be a lot of work. So I was hyped to get to Howard. So finally came the day to leave for Howard. And it was a very interesting day because for me, I was just super, super excited to go. Like I had been so ready to get out of Spanaway. The thing that always affected me growing up was this. Like I had the experience to live around the world. I got to live in Europe and, I had family that was in California and family that was in Georgia. And so I was used to going and seeing all these different places. And Spanaway was just nothing like those places I had been to. And once you've gotten a taste of the world outside of what you've grown up in, it's always hard to just stay in that world that you grew up in. You want to branch out, you want to go and you want to see other things, you want to get a taste of what you've already experienced, you know what I mean? So I couldn't wait to go. My mother, on the other hand, was terrified. She was like, this is my baby. He's about to go 3,000 miles away. And at the time, D.C. was still murder capital. So she's like, he's too sheltered for this. And me, I'm ready to go. Let's get it. So, my father and I were getting ready to roll out, and it's 4 a.m, and I remember my mother, man, she just looked so defeated and sad that day. It was such a sad day. That's the one thing that used to kill me about, whenever I would come back home to visit for college is when I would have to leave. Everybody would just look so sad. Like my father, it would kill him for me to leave. And it was funny because as we got older, as I got older, it was like the tables flipped, and then it was me that was like, oh God, I don't want to leave you guys again, but I have to go be an adult. Oh, I didn't know the real world was gonna be like this. But anyway, so I'm in the car, packed up, and I'm so dramatic. At the time, Janelle Monáe had this song called Letting Go. And so I remember I had that playing in the car. Like it's a new day up in here. Let's get it. I was so hyped. And then we get to DC. And things start to change a little bit. So the first thing was, my father had got our hotel on the other side of town. So the hotel was over by Georgetown University, and I'm looking around, this is just nice, all this nice brick layered buildings, and look at these buildings. And I've never been to DC. We drove past DC one time when I was a child because we were on a road trip, and so I had never been to DC. I didn't know much about it. I just knew that the president lived there, and and anything that I might have seen on BET, that's all I knew. And so I was like, this is just wonderful, this is nice. So that next day when we had to go to campus and the side that Howard was on looked real different from what I saw by Georgetown. I said, this is cultured, this is very bulletproof vestish. All right. But at the same time, I was so excited because I just had never seen so many black people concentrated in one area before. I would see that if I went to Savannah to visit my family, or if I went to visit my family in Richmond, California. But, in DC, I never saw it to this extent. I'm like, well, this is still cool. There was so much culture and stuff to the area that I was at. Even though it was the hood, I still was like, I'll be okay. It's fine. We all people. We all gonna be good. So this is when things start to change. So we're headed to my freshman dorm, and I'm supposed to be staying in Drew Hall. Now, here's the thing. We didn't do the tour. I didn't come to DC beforehand to get a look at the campus. We didn't do anything like that. We pretty much showed up in DC cold turkey. So we're riding and we're trying to find my freshman dorm, aka Drew Hall. And Howard is a unique campus because it's not a campus that's gated in. Parts of the campus are within the city. So you don't really know where you're at if you've never been in the area before. You see the main entrance to get into the campus, but it's not like some of the schools that are gated in and surrounded by a gate on all sides, and it's different. And so me and my father go to the wrong building. We show up first. There's a building that's directly across from this dorm called the Towers that we think is the dorm because it kind of looks like the place on the picture. So my dad was like, wait in the car, I'm gonna, be right back. And because, he had the rental car. He goes in there, he's going for like 10 minutes. I'm like, what the heck? Okay, all right. And mind you, he done took the keys. I'm in the car hot because, mind you, this is August in DC. In 2006, that year, it was a heat wave. And so I'm in that car sweating. I can't let the windows down because the car is off. So I had to open the whole door and sit with the door open. So my father comes back and he's like, actually, that was an apartment. They said the dorm's across the street. So we go across the street to the dorm, and I'm hyped. Like, I still remember exactly what I had on. I had my hair braided. I had just got it braided. This girl, Sophia, that I went to high school with, had braided my hair before I left, and she made sure to do a real special style since I was leaving for college. Like, Sophia's a real friend. Like, as a matter of fact, when I first started doing comedy after college, she used to go to literally every show I had. Even if it was 2 hours away, she would ride with me all the way to the show. Okay, road dog for life. That's your shout out, Sophia. And so, I had my cornrows, juices and berries just flowing, all kind of sheen and grease. And I had this red striped shirt from South Pole. Don't judge. South Pole was still popping when I got out of high school. Maybe not to a lot of y'all, but at least to me it was popping. And I had these really baggy pants on because baggy was still in, and I had these white shell toe Adidas with the gold stripes. And so, I think I had this gold chain on. I got this, my parents had got me this chain from Turkey where it's like, it says your name on the front, and then on the back it's like in hieroglyphics or something like that. I remember they got it from Turkey. I'm like, what y'all got hieroglyphics in Turkey for? That's the wrong country, but whatever. So, we're walking, I'm pulling my little suitcase. My dad's like, go on up there and tell them who you are. You grown now. It's time for you to be a man. Take care of this. Okay, so I go to the front. I'm saying, hey, I'm Michael so-and-so. I'm here to move in. And so they're just kind of looking at me like, okay. And, they pull up the little paper. They start flipping this little clipboard and flipboard with the paper, and the paper. Just flipping the paper. And they're taking forever to find my name. And then finally they're like, you're not on our list. And I'm like, are you sure? I'm this person and we already paid. And my dad, move, you don't ever know how to do nothing right, move. So my dad, he stands up there. He's like, nah, I done paid all this money for this school. Y'all not about to tell me y'all ain't got a room. Y'all need to find it right now. And so the girl, I think she might have been an RA. She goes and she gets somebody else who's a little bit higher up. And that person is like, listen, we've just checked, that person comes, they look through the list some more. They're like, listen, he's not on this list. Are you sure? I'm very sure. I know what I paid. Y'all took the check, didn't y'all? So you gonna tell me y'all not gonna find a room? Oh, okay, we'll figure this out right now. He was like, Michael, you go upstairs, you pick any room you want. I'll be up there in a minute. And I'm looking like, and this is the thing that's funny. My dad kind of forgot that we weren't in Spanaway anymore. You know what I mean? Like, in Spanaway, as a black person in a pretty much all-white establishment, if you needed to turn it on, you could. You know what I mean? Like, if you were at a restaurant and you watched the host sit 3 different people who came in after you for some random reason, you could cuss out the host and ask for the manager and cause a scene, and you would leave that restaurant with your meal paid for and a voucher to come back for free the next day and everything, and they'd roll out the red carpet because, hell, half the people in there were scared of you anyway. At Howard, not so much. Okay, these people were like, look, we done already told you he ain't on the list, so I don't know why you still standing here throwing hot air at us. You need to go somewhere and figure out what you done did wrong, if you got anything else you want to say. And mind you, I haven't gone upstairs to go and pick my room because I'm thinking like, I don't think it works like that. I don't want to cause too much trouble on my first day in my new home. And so, I'm just standing there. Plus, I just want to see how this is going to turn out. And so what ends up happening is somebody ends up overhearing the conversation, and they come to me and they're like, wait a minute, is that your dad over there talking? And I'm like, yeah, that's him. And they're like, baby, you look so young. What are you? You're a senior? Are you advanced or something? I was like, no, I'm a freshman. They were like, freshman? Baby, there's no freshman in this dorm. What are you looking for? I'm like, this is Drew Hall, ain't it? The lady was like, no, this is the Towers. This is an upperclassman dorm. If Drew Hall is, you need to go to 511 Gresham Place. And I was like, oh, dad. While he's still arguing, dad, we not at the right dorm. Oh, Lord, the way that the people that just looked at us like, really? Y'all done came in here and done caused a scene for the last 10 minutes, and y'all not even at the right building? Okay. And so I had to pull my little suitcase back to the car. I was so embarrassed. My dad over here huffing and puffing, about to start sweating. Blood pressure high. All right, he was one step from fighting in there, because him and whatever the other person was that was over that RA were going at it toe to toe. It was, and then like the campus security guard was just kind of standing there, like getting ready to walk on over. It was really about to be a scene in there with little old me with my cornrows and my baggy pants and my South Pole shirt, because I'm supposed to go up there and just pick a random room because that's how my dad was going to make it work. To be honest, I wanted to see what would have happened. He probably would have made it work if we would have stuck it out for like another 20 minutes, I think. All right? Don't be fooled. He did grow up eating the Black Panther breakfast. Like when he grew up in Oakland as a child, he was over there getting that free breakfast from the Black Panthers as a child. So, he got some street in him. Don't be fooled. Then to make it even worse, when we left the Towers, then we see this big giant sign that says Howard University Towers. I'm like, how did we miss that? Dang. So anyway, we finally get to the right place. We get to Drew Hall, and Drew Hall is a different kind of building. It doesn't look as nice as the Towers, and it's also not air conditioned. Hot as hell, straight sweat box. All right, it was so muggy, it was hot, it was humid. I was like, yo, what is this? Whoa, my goodness, Jesus. God, it was hot. Now, the one thing that made that day, end up being pretty cool was that I actually ended up getting the same room that Diddy had when he stayed in Drew. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, the people who were giving me my room were like, yo, this is Diddy's old room, right? I was like, oh, okay, cool. So in my head, at the time I was really into music. So I was like, yeah, this would be cool, symbolic. All right, predicting my future already. I'm already about to be making moves. So, my dad helps me move into my room. We go to Target to get some stuff, and I'm showing my age because at this time there was not a Target in D.C. You had to go to Virginia or go to Maryland to go to places like Target and Walmart. And, so he gets all my stuff because, he still had the nice hotel over in Georgetown, so I was trying to still stay at the hotel with him because I didn't want to stay in the dorm yet because, one, there was no AC in that room, and it was 106 degrees every day, and two, my roommate was cool, but I was like, look, I still want my own space at the moment, so, Dad, can I come to the hotel with you? No, nope, you gotta come on, you gotta be a man now, go on, you got it. Ugh. So, that was the moving day. Let's actually get to the freshman year. So that first 2 weeks at Howard, I just got yelled at every day. Every day I got yelled at or cussed out about something. And it was so funny because I was never doing anything to provoke anybody. I just stayed getting cussed out for random things. I remember I was just walking downstairs into the dorm. I had this green folder. It was my inventory folder for my dorm. And I'm walking out of nowhere. This lady goes, "Excuse me." And I'm like, "Huh? What are you doing, my folder?" "Huh? This is my folder. The lady at the front desk gave that to me." "I know, and you're supposed to return it to the front desk so we can do the inventory for your room." Okay. Did you do the inventory for your room?" I think so." "Well, give it here. Let me see." "You ain't filled this out." I know. I was coming down here to ask a question." "Well, what? Well, you coming to the wrong side. You going that way. I'm over here." "Well, I don't know who you are." "Well, I'm sitting behind the desk, so don't you think you would know who I am?" "Oh, okay. All right." And so she's like, "Baby, you're going to have to understand. This is Howard. You're going to have to keep up. Otherwise, you ain't going to make it here. Now, what you got to do, you got to go back to your room, do the inventory. If something doesn't look right, check it off, and then bring the paper back to me." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then at the same time, they had this freshman orientation going on, and they had it in Crampton. And so they'd have all the freshmen go to Crampton, and you'd sit in there, and they'd have these big video demonstrations about what was going on and where you could find this, and where's the library, and where's the caf, and where's this, and when the classes start. And they also had people come and talk about different things, and but they had no way of really regulating and making sure that all the freshmen would show up. Because mind you, school hasn't started yet. The freshmen got there, a whole week before everybody else. And so what they would do is they would give you a note card when you walked in, and you'd have to write your name on it. And then when you walk out, you give the note card to the people working the doors. And so one of those days, mind you, I didn't even go to half of them because I was asleep. So, and at this point, my father's already, he's flown back to Washington State. And so at one of those, I missed, a few of them. And so I finally go to one, and I forgot to get a card. Because they had told us, like, if you don't return the card, you're going to be in big trouble. And of course, we're all freshmen, and we're new, and we're scary and scared of everything. So we really thought we'd get in trouble if we didn't go to this orientation. And so, one of those days, I went to the orientation, I forgot to get the stupid card. So when it was over with, I went to the lady, I was like, "Hey, I didn't get a card." She, "Don't you be trying to fool me. I know you didn't get no card. You just walked in here just now. Don't be trying to get over on me, because I ain't the one." And I'm, "What? No, I just sat in there the last, boy, go somewhere. As a matter of fact, you need to go to Mr. Rook's office." And I'm like, "Who's Mr. Rook?" "And he's in the so-and-so building." So I had to walk over to this building, and I had to go to Mr. Rook's office, and I go in there, it's like 30 of us, and I'm so confused, like, what did I do? I just sat in this 3-hour-long orientation. Why am I in this guy's office? And he was just like, "Oh, okay, you can go." I was like, "All right." Hell, one of those days I got cussed out at Popeyes. Now, the Popeyes wasn't actually on campus. It was just down the street. But, my roommate and I, at the time, we weren't really feeling the food in the cafeteria. And so we were like, let's just get some Popeyes and we can just eat on that the whole day. Let's go get like a 10-piece or something. That should be breakfast and lunch. And so I went and I got the 10-piece, and they forgot to give us, I had asked for an extra biscuit or two or something like that. And so I was like, "Excuse me, I didn't get the extra biscuits I ordered with the 10-piece. "Yeah, no biscuits come with no 10-piece. And I'm sitting here, "What did you just say?" "Yeah, no biscuits come with no 10-piece. I ordered some extra ones. Here's the receipt." "No biscuits come with no 10-piece. They don't come for biscuit." Listen, look, here's the receipt. At this point, I done been there 2 weeks, so I'm starting to get a little bit of a personality, a little bit of a backbone. I'm like, "Look, here's the receipt." And so she gets the receipt, she looks and it says, extra biscuits. She gets mad, she goes, gets the biscuits, stuffs them in the little box, throws the box across the counter, it slides off. I happen to catch it, and I'm looking at her like, what the heck? And it was a lot. By the way, I don't know what accent I just attempted to do, but old girl was from one of them islands, so I don't know the accent. I just put together like 8 different accents in one, so just bear with me on that. In addition to getting cussed out for the first 2 weeks I was there, I had a really, really hard time finding where I fit in at first. I had this wonderful perception of what I thought it was going to be, and at the time, it was just, I'll be honest, I was missing home, because, listen, it was lit at home. I had my stuff together, even though I didn't want to be there. My social life was really, really good. I had all these different things going for me, and really what it was I was getting humbled. I got there cocky. I arrived thinking that I was just going to be, the prize in the Cracker Jack box. And it turned out that literally every person on campus was the prize in the Cracker Jack box from their town. Every person I ran into was the student body president, or they danced, or they were the captain of the football team, or they were one of the high achieving students that were like the top tier from their class. Because when I finished high school, I had, I think, a 3.8 or a 3.9. And these were students that had 4.2s and 4.4s because, their schools did grades on a weighted system, and my high school didn't do weighted grades. And, so it was just like so many different kinds of people that were there. And I mean, everybody that was there was just like some top of the line mess. And then on top of that, when you talk about where people were from, I was just from some small town called Spanaway, which at the time, I was just telling everybody I was from Seattle because I didn't feel like trying to explain what Spanaway was. And true story, when I would go to the club, because I soon learned that Seattle wasn't really the cool city to be from, I would switch which city I was from every week. So when we would be at the club and they'd, "Where Brooklyn at?" I'd be in there, "Yeah!" And then the next, "Where's Chicago?" "Yeah!" "Is Atlanta now?" "Yeah!" "Miami?" "Yeah!" "Houston?" "Ah!" Like, I would be switching cities every week because, every time we would go to the club or at a party, one, there was no artists or musical acts out of Seattle that they would play because, D.C. was kind of cool because the clubs would play all kind of regional acts, and especially at a Howard party, pretty much every region was represented, all the states. So, the kids in the Bay got what they had going because everybody was still getting hyphy at the time, and then LA had their stuff, and then Dallas and Houston had their stuff, and New Orleans had their stuff, and Atlanta had their stuff, and New York had their stuff, and Chicago had their, but Seattle, we ain't had nothing, so I had to just be from a new city every week. But, there were kids from all these different cities, kids from different countries. There were kids who were super, super rich. Some kids whose parents were celebrities or politicians or royalty from another country, and so I was learning that, okay, you thought you were the ish in little old Spanaway, but guess what? Now you're about to get humbled, and you're going to have to really step it up if you think you're going to be making any kind of impact on this campus. And so I had a really, really hard time fitting in right off the bat. It took a minute for me to kind of find where I fit in. To be really honest, I didn't find my real strong circle of lifelong friends until I was a junior. I did meet some really, really great people freshman and sophomore year, but those lifelong friends and just, I guess the element or my element, I found my element like towards the end of my sophomore year going into my junior year. But I did meet some good people. And another thing, I learned that Howard was pretty much a fashion capital for campuses because looking back, I thought I was killing it, and no, they were quick to let me know, you're going to have to step your clothing game up. I'm like, is it really that serious? Because, when I went to high school, some of those days, we'd come to school in sweatpants and house shoes. We all just lived down the street. It was never a big deal to really dress up. Plus, it's overcast skies from October to April, so, you're not going to really get to wear the best of the best clothes because it's going to rain anyway. So, Howard, everybody, there were models and all kind of everything, and people were gorgeous on campus. Everybody, I'm just like, I gotta step it up. I mean, hell, I would let my braids get all fuzzy after 2 weeks, and there were some people who were getting that stuff braided every day, and I was just like, wow, because hell, I was still wearing velour tracksuits because that's what was popular at the time where I was at. And even with the baggy clothes, people at Howard were not wearing baggy anything. Everything was all styled, and I'm like, yo, y'all. And at the time, I didn't have money to just go and buy the most fancy clothes. I was still shopping at like the discount stores in high school. So coming here, I'm like, I went into Nordstrom and the jeans were $160. I said, ooh. Okay, you know how it is like when you go to the store and you check the price of something and it's way too much and you don't want to just put it right back because you don't want everybody to look at you and think you don't have any money. You kind of just, you'll hold it and you'll play around and you look at the tag and then pick up the pants and try to switch them out, trying to check the quality, and then you'll ease those clothes back down and put them on that shelf and then you leave the store. Like, yeah, I did that many, many times. But anyway, I ended up meeting some really cool people. One was my roommate. Roommate was really, really cool. Lots of stories around him. But he was from New Jersey. He and I were really different. He pretty much, how can I explain it? I came there pretty much sheltered to where I knew if there was a problem, I could call my mom or dad real quick to come handle things. He was more so one of those kids that pretty much, they had, the loving mother, but they pretty much raised themselves by the time they were teenagers. So they were doing adult things and teenage things, and they were very self-sufficient. That's the word. He was self-sufficient. I wasn't at the time. And so, he had already had a job. He somehow ended up getting a job at the mall, making like $30K a year as a student. Now, mind you, when you're 17, 18, $30K sounds like a lot of money. And really it is when you don't have to pay rent or anything. And so he was just in a totally different playing field than I was. And then I met this girl that was really, really cool. It's kind of funny how we met, because I was in a bookstore and the campus police were searching her at the time. And really what it was is for some reason she beat. And so they were checking all her bags and stuff. And they were acting like this girl had stole an Xbox out of freaking Best Buy. I was like, it's a book. And she didn't steal anything. What it was is, I forgot what happened, but she didn't steal anything. But she ended up remembering me when I went to, I had a poli-sci class, and she recognized me from the store because I was joking when she was getting frisked. I was like, dang, they acting like you done robbed the bank, huh? You about to go to jail for stealing the book, huh? And so she remembered me, and me and her ended up being tight. And then it was kind of funny because at the time I had a crush on her, and they had this thing called Campus Pals and some other stuff where it's some of the older, the sophomores and juniors and seniors who have already been there for a year. They try to help all the freshmen get to know each other, so they do all these different events. And one of the events was going to King's Dominion, which was a big amusement park in Virginia. And so she had asked if I wanted to hang with her at the amusement park, and I'm over here trying to make my move and shoot my shot. I forgot what the phrase was at the time, but I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I'm thinking this girl is gonna get on all the little cute little girly rides, and maybe she'll do bumper cars. And, in my head, I'm thinking we're gonna be like Robin and what's her name from Bebe's Kids when they're in a little love cruise thing or whatever. That's what I thought was about to happen. No. First of all, this girl was from Queens. We went on, and mind you, I used to be scared of rides. I didn't go on a roller coaster until that day. I used to be scared of roller coasters. My dad took me to Disneyland one time. We went to Space Mountain. I thought Space Mountain was a store because it looked like one of the houses from the Jetsons on the outside, so I wanted to see it. And we got in the line and we discovered, whoa, this is a roller coaster. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to get on. I don't want to get on. I was like 7 or 8. My dad was like, oh, nope, you getting on this ride. We done waited in this line for an hour and 20 minutes. Let's go. And so I never really did rides. This girl, she took me on everything that shot upside down, could spin you around, every roller coaster. I was like, what the hell, dude? And I didn't want to get on any of the rides, but I didn't want to look like a punk in front of this girl, so I had to get on all these rides. She even had us get on that damn drop tower, or that ride that just goes straight up and drops down. To be honest though, after that, I'm good on rides. Now I can get on all of them. I like the thrill, but she had me shook. We went on everything that could just kill you. I was like, yo, if I knew you was gonna be like this, hell, I would have just said no. I was shook. I wanted to do the bumper cars. She's like, we ain't doing no bumper cars. Come on, let's get in this roller coaster that shoots out of a volcano. I'm like, okay. During my freshman year, I also discovered that I was kind of lame. And there's just always one moment I always remember. It's so funny when I always look back on it. I was so embarrassed. And so I had never been to the club before until I went to Howard. Like I told you, my parents were very, very protective. They barely would let me go to a house party, let alone a club. You ain't going to no club at all. So Howard was the first time I had ever been to a club. And so in my head, I thought the club would be kind of like how the school dances were, or some of the house parties were. And, at the school dances, because I was known as the dude that could do all of the dancing and the this and the that and the breaking and all that, the school dances for me used to be a moment for me to shine. That's when I could just show out, do my best moves. And, then somebody would come and challenge you, and then both of y'all have a dance off or some crap like that. And then because I was also on the dance team, if the right song came on and it was one of our songs that we performed, then, we would do the whole routine. Everybody, yeah. So we get to this club. I will always remember it was Club Envy. At the Club Envy, the right song came on. I want to say it was Tell Me When to Go, E40. I swear it was that song. That song came on. I was, oh, wait a minute now. Man, I went and busted out a full 8 count. I was doing my best moves. In my head, I was performing at the BET Awards or the VMAs or some mess like that. I was doing it, and I was just going and getting it in. The song, because Tell Me When to Go was my song when it dropped. The whole West Coast, we partied to that mess all senior year of high school. When that mess dropped, that crap it hit. At least on the West Coast. And so it had finally played, and that was the closest thing I was going to get to anything that was from the West Coast that night. And I full 8 count, I did a spin and I jumped and stuff, and I'm killing it, thinking I'm killing it. And then I start kind of just looking around, because people have kind of moved out the way, and I'm looking, and people are looking back, but they're not looking at me with amazement. They're looking at me like, dude, what's wrong with this dude? And I just kind of was like, okay, y'all don't dance like that here? And then I started looking around, and everybody gyrating and twerking on each other. I was like, okay. Let me just go to the bathroom and try again. Like, I was so embarrassed. Like, I felt like everybody was laughing at me. I was so humiliated. And speaking of the club, the issue with the club, I was in that mess Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. If it was open on Sunday, I was in there too. Like, man, when I tell you, I was in the club every day. And mind you, I didn't even like it that much. I just liked the fact that I had some freedom and that there was music and stuff. Because the issue I had with the club was once they started playing trap music for the last 3 hours of the club, I'd be ready to go. Because I always liked the first hour when they would play all the throwbacks and they start playing that Baltimore club stuff. And I always thought the Baltimore club and the Jersey sound sounded really good. And, they did all the upbeat stuff. And then, that last section of the club or that last portion of the club just turned into trap music. And at the time, I didn't like trap music. So, I was like, But man, I was in the club all the time, which is probably why I was missing a lot of class, which is what we need to get into next. So let me talk about the freaking class experience. I will definitely say that, most of my favorite moments that came from Howard outside of my social life were my classes from junior and senior year. Freshman year, listen, man, I struggled a lot. And really what it is this. At Howard, what I love about Howard is that, one, the professors are really, really awesome. They all really look out for you, especially the ones that are closer to whatever your major is. And at the time, I was political science. Now, by the time I graduated, I had switched to the School of Communications, and I finished with a degree in communication and culture. But at the time, the professors really, really cared about your well-being. There would be some really, really good ones. And they held you to a certain standard. They weren't just going to let you slip and slide up in there and do some nonsense. They would hold you accountable. And so the other thing about classes at Howard, it requires you to pretty much erase everything you've ever learned in K through 12 and recognize that now you're on a new turf. And you're gonna have to approach everything very differently. And what was okay for high school is not even acceptable for college. And what was great for high school, it can't even sit in the same room with what you're doing in college. And what was exceptionally well in high school still is not even a part of the conversation for these kind of classes. And so you had to be extremely, extremely disciplined to really do your best and really get the results that you wanted. The issue that I had when I came into Howard is that I came into Howard on vacation mode. Because I worked so hard my senior year, and I worked that entire summer before freshman year, I was teaching dance and doing a campaign and everything, I got to Howard in vacation mode, man, I need a break, I need a vacation. And the problem is, when I got there in my vacation mode, I never got out of it. And so, I spent all my time hanging out and going to the club and, still trying to go chase after the girl that was no longer paying me any attention, and doing all that. And it also didn't help that my roommate, because he had his job, he wasn't going to class either. He was making his money from his job. So for me, it would be hard to, wake up for 8 o'clock class and go to it. And I'm looking at him knocked out. I'm like, hell, I don't want to go to class either. And I kept forgetting, well, listen, he at least got some money. So if he fails a class, he got the money to make up for it. You don't. And so I had a really, really hard time. I don't know. I just didn't approach things right. And then some of the classes I really struggled in. Oddly enough, the class I had the hardest time in was Pan-Africanism, which is funny for those who follow me now. Y'all like, really? Oh, man, look. Man, first of all, let me go back. I was always aware that I was black. I was always aware that there were always issues in this country and on this planet that pertains to the experience that black people have globally. But I didn't know how to put everything together for it to make sense, if that makes any kind of sense. I had never heard of Jim Crow in my entire life, ever. I knew that, there was the issue with the civil rights era during that time period. I knew that we weren't allowed to do certain things, but I didn't know there was a name for it. I didn't understand, I'd never heard of anything like a Willie Lynch letter. I was like, what are y'all talking about? I never knew anything about Tulsa, Oklahoma. I never knew anything about the school to prison pipeline. I never knew anything about Reconstruction. I never knew anything. I heard about sharecropping. Really, pretty much my history lesson on black anything coming up in K-12 was pretty much you go from slavery to Oprah in 20 pages, and that's your history book. And if you scroll, Michael Jackson might be in a book somewhere too. Actually, Janet was in mine, but cool. It was as long as it's a Jackson, we good. That was pretty much your history. And my parents, they would teach what they could teach, but to be honest, because they grew up in an era where black history was not taught, they pretty much, what they knew was what they saw or what they experienced. And they would teach me what they could, but they also wanted me to grow up and understand that, or pretty much they wanted me to have my innocence growing up. And it worked, for high school. But the problem is, they probably can't stand it now, but I ended up becoming so overly radical in their eyes after college, because there was all this stuff that I had never known that I ended up learning later down the line. Like one thing that I always used to kind of get mad at my parents about was I never had the conversation about what to do if you're ever pulled over by the police. And I ended up having to learn the hard way, because I was met with a taser gun and met with 5 squad cars and a dog, and they made me sit on the curb for an hour and a half because they couldn't verify who I was. They thought I fit the description of somebody, and mind you, I gave the police 3 different forms of ID. I gave them my military ID, my Washington State ID, and my Howard student ID, and they still were like, you still fit the description of the person we're looking for. Because this is when I went back home to visit on Christmas break, when I got pulled over of my freshman year. And I'm driving my little car, got my music with the windows down, having me a good little time, just jamming. Next thing you know, whoop whoop, I'm like, huh? And so, when I got pulled over, I thought, oh, they must be giving me a ticket or something. I know I wasn't speeding, but let me just have everything ready. So, I got my driver's license out of my wallet, and then I reached in the glove compartment to get my insurance card, because, I wanted to have everything ready for the police officers when they got there, because this was going to be real quick, and then I was going to go about my merry way. And so, when I went in that glove box, that gave them probable cause to think that I was getting a weapon. And so by the time, and mind you, my glove box was so junky, and so I'm over here digging and looking, and so I'm probably digging in it for a good 45 seconds. And by the time I finally got my card out and turned around, because remember I said my windows were down, I looked to the left, and that taser gun was pointed in my face, and he was like, if you do anything else stupid, I'm gonna blow your brains out. I'm like, whoa. And to myself, I'm like, please do not sneeze. If you sneeze, you die. Don't sneeze. Like, I had never had that conversation about, what to do in that situation. And I mean, long story short, fortunately, I never, I didn't get beat up or nothing, but man, I was livid, like, afterwards. It was a really embarrassing situation. They had the entire street blocked off. Long story short, somebody broke into some houses. They were looking for that person. They thought I was him. And the worst part is, the person that they were looking for is somebody I went to high school with. And I know that Negro looks nothing like me. I was insulted. But anyway, they had the entire street blocked off, and that street was blocked off for like an hour. And then, like, when it was over, all those cars had to pass, and everybody kept looking at my car trying to see, who was the person that did all the stuff. It was a lot. But, so my parents never, there was just some conversations we didn't have. We were still black, but that's another thing. When you grow up in certain areas, sometimes, a lot of black people who live in areas, I think, that are predominantly white, their goal is to just try to live the least problematic life possible. Make the money they make at their job, try to fit in, and make everything easy. They weren't going to shake the table too much. Now, me, as I grew up, I became the opposite. I'm the one ready to fight about any and everything. I will find the racism in everything. And so, at Howard, I didn't know any of this, and I had a really, really hard time in Pan-Africanism. I remember the first question in that class when we started. Dr. Wright was like, all right, so are you a good nigga or are you a bad nigga? I said, huh? What? And me, I am an African American. Like, I was so confused, and like, I had a hard time in that class. It was so hard because a lot of the concepts in the books we were reading, this was stuff I had never heard of. It just didn't make sense to me. I was like, there's no way people could be this horrible towards black people. This can't be. And, I didn't realize that, everything that, slavery, the generational and residual effects of slavery still affected us today. I didn't understand that. And I remember one of the assignments we had, we had read, what was that book? My God, if I can remember the book. Either way, we read a book, and there was so much, I couldn't understand half of what was going on. And then I had a sociology class. The one thing I loved about Howard is that a lot of the classes, you'd be doing the social sciences and all these different classes, but they would still incorporate the black experience into that subject matter. And so I was pretty much having to seam rip everything I'd been taught and relearn about who I was and relearn about what my history is and where we come from. And then that's what I did like about Pan-Africanism, because it also taught me to understand and respect the struggles of everybody on the continent who shares black skin, even if you're not from the United States. Because one of the other things was Howard is so diverse. My dorm, when we first started, used to be really, really segregated. You had the black American students, doing their thing. You had the Caribbean students doing their thing. You had the Afro-Latino students doing their thing. And then you had the West Africans doing their thing. And then the other people who were from the continent doing their thing, and we were all kind of a little segregated, not because we didn't like each other, but we just didn't understand each other's experience, and we just did things differently. And so by the time that year would end, everybody was cool. That was always the cool thing. Like, you had a new respect, because where I grew up, there was nobody everybody was, you were black or white, or you were Asian and mixed with something else. There was no such thing as people who were from West Africa. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be able to name a single country in West Africa at the time. I knew like 5 African countries. I could name Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Madagascar, and maybe Niger. That was it. In Egypt. Africa to me was very unknown and foreign at the time, unfortunately. You know, Howard taught me to understand that the world is global and everything is not solely centered around what happens in your neighborhood. You have to think globally, because as a collective, black people and as, you know, black people of African descent, we kind of all fall under a certain bubble of oppression that affects all of us to a certain extent, even though our experiences are very, very different. And that's another conversation if you want to talk about the differences within the diaspora and what people experience. So I had a really, really hard time in those first classes. And then, God, even the English class I was struggling in. I had a professor, she was, you know, I was killing it at first, and then she discovered I was from Washington State, and she's like, wait a minute, I would expect your writing to be much stronger. And so she just started purposely, overly, like, marking my papers down. Like, I was like, dang, I struggled in those classes. And the other issue was I wasn't going to class. I was sleeping in so much. You know, when I first signed up, you know, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take all these 8 and 9 a.m. classes, because, you know, high school, you know, class starts at like 7:15, so, you know, this is nothing for me. But I didn't realize, you know, coming out of high school, I was going to bed every night by 10. College, you're up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning, hanging out, doing whatever. And so, you know, I struggled. It was. I didn't do too good my first semester. I wasn't failing anything or anything like that, but I certainly wasn't walking around with a 3.9, not at all. I also think because in college they're not holding your hand, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. The biggest thing I struggled with was missing class, because, you know, in high school, if you didn't go to class, you had to come back with a note and a doctor's note or this, that, and the third. College, you missed class, you just missed class. It was it. Some of the professors had 200 and 300 students. They didn't have time to be worried about, you know, why you weren't there. And so, you know, sometimes there'll be a 2 or 3 week span, and there may have been 8 classes in that 2 or 3 week span, and I only made it to 2 or 3 of them. I ended up doing better later down the line. My sophomore year, I made up for it. I had like a 3.8. I was like, boom, and what? But yeah, it's another conversation for what happened afterwards. But so I ended up having to approach how I learned and how I processed information and how I wrote and how I did everything. And as much as I hated it during that time, because I was stressed out. Like, man, some of those days I wanted to cry. But, you know, I was real stressed out trying to, like, I don't think I'm doing well here. But I appreciate all of those moments, because they really made me step up my game. You know, what was exceptional in my little high school was mediocre for college. And so it made me have to step it up. And so that's probably the biggest lesson I learned out of my freshman year, was like, okay, now you got to step it up. And there were also some things that I got introduced to that I just discovered, like, you know what, okay, you had a very sheltered life. And so it helped me to learn that, okay, the world is very different. Like, one of the things I'll always remember, drugs. I didn't do drugs, but I witnessed a lot of things. You know, my roommate was cool. One of his friends was cool too, but one of his friends was a big old drug head. Just any kind of pill, whatever, he was gonna pop it. Anything you could smoke, he was gonna smoke it. And so one time, we had a friend that lived across the hall. He had got pistol whipped in the neighborhood. And so he was supposed to get some corrective surgery, like on his teeth and everything like that. And before they did the surgery, they're like, well, we're going to give you like this liquid codeine. Or I think they did the surgery, but they gave him liquid codeine for his medicine. They decide they're going to lace the weed with the liquid codeine. And so I'm coming from the library at 11, 12 o'clock at night, stressed out. I know I'm about to fail this test that I'm going to take tomorrow. I open the door. My roommate, one of his friends, and the one that got pistol whipped, in my room, all 3 of them hallucinating. I mean, flipping over, knocking stuff over, throwing pillows, just freaking out. I'm like, what the hell is wrong? And I didn't know they were high. And I'm like, y'all good? What was going on? I mean, my roommate was actually pretty together. It was the friend that was really like out of his mind. I don't think my roommate did whatever they did. But like the other 2 were just high as a kite. And then one of them, he really started losing his mind. He started crying because he was talking about his heart. He couldn't feel his heartbeat. He said, my heart's stopping. My heart's stopping. Yo, my heart's stopping. I can't breathe. I'm dying. And I'm just, listen, I ain't never seen it like this in my life. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I'm like, what the hell is going on? and I didn't know if I was supposed to go get the RA, because I'm like, if I get the RA, then they're in trouble. They're going to say they're doing drugs, then they're going to get kicked out of school. But what if they think I'm doing it too? I'm not getting kicked out. So I didn't get the RA, which was kind of stupid, because it was like, dang, well, what if they would have like overdosed or some crap like that, or something, then they would have died on my watch. That would have been a totally different podcast today, huh? And so, they're on this super high buzz, and I don't know what happens, but magically over like 5 minutes, the buzz dies and they come back to their senses, and I'm like, yo, y'all can't be doing this no more. Like this, y'all look at the room. Like the room was tore up. I mean, everything was just thrown around the room. One of the friends was like just sweating. It's like sweating. I'm like, what the hell, man? Come on now. And then another thing, I had family out here. I have a really lovely aunt who pretty much, she had an extra room in her house, like in Silver Spring, and she pretty much created a room for me to stay there. So anytime that I was stressed out at school, if I needed to get away, I could stay at her house. And so, I was at her house one time, and she had a friend that she was kind of taking care of. And the friend, I had seen the friend before, and mind you, this friend used to, back in the 70s, he used to write different plays and stuff, and some of those plays ended up being productions at Howard back in the 70s. And so, long story short, crack epidemic hit. Did a number on a lot of people, including him. And so I remember one time I was at my aunt's house chilling. He was talking about, how's school going? You go to school. Now, mind you, I know who the person is. He knows me. We know I go to school. We know I go to Howard. Why are you asking me this again? Like, oh, okay. And then his language and his words start to get slurred. I'm like, what is going on with him? And so I just keep watching TV, minding my business. He's in the kitchen making food, and I look at what he's putting together. This dude opens everything in the kitchen and just puts it in a bowl and stirs it up with his hands. So he has like ground beef. He throws some random eggs in there, milk, cereal, crackers, just anything, and just starts stirring it up with his hands. And he's dancing with this big bowl with all the food in it, and he just starts eating it. I'm like, what the heck? And mind you, none of this food is cooked. It's all raw. So what would happen in that situation? Because I don't want y'all thinking my aunt had people in her house doing drugs. He normally would be out in the neighborhood and do whatever he was doing, and then he would come to my aunt's house, for a meal or something like that. And so at the time, it was just me and him there. She wasn't even there at the house, because if she was there, it would have been a totally different. She probably would have cussed him out that day and told him he got to go back out in the streets. But I'm not exactly sure what drug it was that he was on or what drugs, but I just knew it was something I ain't never seen before. And watching him, and the thing was, I knew him when he was also sober. So seeing him when he was on his high, it was like he was unrecognizable. I was like, this is absolutely crazy. But that was more so just symbolic of, something that had hit the area, decades earlier. And for some people, it still was affecting them. Experiences like that just made me understand that, we're all cut from a different cloth, and everybody has their different experiences. And it also makes me not judge people who do have issues with drugs or addiction, because most people who end up becoming drug addicts are not doing drugs because, they want to be an addict. Sometimes you slip into it and an accident happens and now you're hooked and different things, but it just made me look at things differently. But overall, my freshman year, there were just so many different experiences, So as my freshman year was continuing, I just didn't really feel that great. I wasn't really doing that well. I wasn't a really strong student. I felt like a failure, to be really honest. The year had gotten better. I had friends and, I was doing things, but my grades weren't really that great. I wasn't confident in what I was doing. And I just remember one day, I was walking out of Blackburn, which was like this, pretty much like a student center, kind of like if you watch the Parkers, where like they used to always hang out, kind of like that. And so I wasn't really feeling that great. And at the time, I really, really was missing home. Like, it's interesting because freshman year, as a freshman, I was always like, I can't wait to go home for Christmas. I can't wait to go home for the summer. I can't wait to go home for spring break. By the time I was a senior, I was like, no, I don't want to go home for Christmas. No, I'm not going home for spring break. Ain't nobody going home for the summer. But I was just feeling really bad. And mind you, I'd been doing some other things. I'd been volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club, this Kingman Boys and Girls Club in Northwest DC. I was volunteering there, a lot of different things. But I was coming out of Blackburn with my CD player, and this random lady stops me. Somebody, she was a lot older. She wasn't a student. It was like some random lady stops me, and she's like, come here, I just want to talk to you. And I've never seen this lady in my life. I don't know her. She doesn't know me. It's 8 p.m. I'm stressed out. I probably had some group project I was trying to put together last minute that wasn't organized, and I can't even find half my group. And stressed out, and so I go to sit with her, and she's like, you know what, you just look like you're just gonna be somebody. Like, I don't know you from anywhere, but you just look like you're gonna be somebody great. I just want you to know that. And she was saying, you know, I'm actually here right now because I'm here for my daughter. You know, she goes to Howard as well, and she's not making the right choices. She done found a boyfriend, and he's pretty much influencing her the wrong way. She's not going to class now. Nobody's heard from her, but I know she's fine because she's still spending all my money because I can see her bank account. And, you know, I was feeling down all day about just what's going on with my daughter, and then I don't know, for some reason I just saw you coming out of here, and you have this innocence in your eyes, and you look like maybe you're dealing with some of the things that I might be dealing with on the side, but I just want you to know, like, I see something in you. You're gonna be so great, and you're gonna change the world, and you're gonna just do all of these different things, and I see it, and I don't normally do this with random people, but I see it in you. And for me, I'm like, okay. Like, I really was caught off guard because at that time, I just wasn't feeling that great about a lot of things. Like, I was a little depressed my freshman year just because I really had a hard time adjusting. You know, it was just so different. And I thought, you know, again, I got humbled. A lot of the things weren't the way that I thought they were going to be. And mind you, Howard was great. It was a great experience. There were a lot of really cool things that happened. You know, like I got to volunteer at the ceremonial groundbreaking for the Martin Luther King Memorial. So I got to meet Oprah and like Nick Cannon and Barack Obama before he was the president, and, you know, Maya Angelou. And I even, they let me work the VIP entrance and everything. And then they had me driving like the celebrities in the golf cart because it was across like the little mall, but it had been raining and they didn't want the celebrities walking in the mud, and so I was driving the celebrities in the golf cart. So, you know, that was really cool. You know, the homecoming stuff was always cool. And at the time, my dad's job had moved him to Pennsylvania, so he would come down, you know, every random month or two just to come visit and check on me. So he and I had, you know, some time to catch up, and he came for homecoming and we went to the gospel show together, you know, and I had some really good friends and stuff, but stuff just felt weird. And at the time, one of my really good friends from home was at Clark, and they were like, you know, I can't do this. I'm dropping out. Not dropping out isn't the word. They were just like, you know, I just want to do something else. And so I was kind of at a crossroads. I knew didn't want to leave Howard, but I was just like, something's got to give. So when she randomly pulled me over and said that, it just changed how I felt. Like, she made me feel so empowered. And I was getting that from some of my classes and my peers, but for some reason, her saying that was like God sent. Because when I tell you my experience at Howard changed after that moment, like, that's when I really experienced Howard, and it became literally still the best moment. Like, it's never been that good since then. Like, Howard is just, I love that school. I love it to death. I didn't want to leave when it was time to graduate. Like, and I'll get to that in the different episodes when I talk about the sophomore, the junior, and senior year. But, you know, her conversation for some reason just made me feel so good about life. And I think what had me stressed out was, you know, really working at that Boys and Girls Club. I learned that, you know, you kind of had a privileged upbringing. Like, the hardest thing was working with those kids was like, some of them, you know, some of their parents were HIV positive. Some of their parents were, you know, they had addiction issues. Some of their parents weren't around. Some of their parents were dead. Some of their parents were in jail. Hell, some of the parents were only 2 or 3 years older than me, and at the time I was 18. So they would come to pick up their child who was 6 or 7, sometimes 8, and I'm like, wait a minute, now you're only like 20 years old. So I'm like, damn, wow. You know, life is different for a lot of people. I met a really nice young lady who really wanted to go to college and everything like that, and she had these really good grades. She was like 3.5 or 3.6, and then, you know, she showed me her SAT scores. Her SAT score was a 600 total. And I was like, how? You know, how are your grades so good, but your scores are so low? And I recognized that it wasn't the student, but it was the resources that were provided to her. And that's when I had learned that, you know, as bad as I thought my high school used to be, because our high school was a piece of crap. I mean, it would rain and we'd have to put buckets in the hallway and everything. But even then, I learned that, you know what, even then you had it made. And I also learned at the time, because I was volunteering at this elementary school called Bruce Monroe, and they didn't even have a hot lunch program. You know, the food that the kids ate every day that they would rush to the cafeteria for was some handmade sandwiches on this day. And I'm just like, yo, this is crazy. Because going back to middle and high school, as much as I used to complain about the food we had, at least it was hot. You know, so working with those kids, I got humbled in a different way, where it's like, you need to be grateful for the things that you have. You got to stop being or having so much animosity towards your parents, because all they've ever done was love you. You know, the stuff that you're trying to be petty about is not that serious. And so, you know, working with those kids had changed. You know, I started feeling a certain way about things, and I almost felt bad for having the upbringing that I had, because I'd never been in a space where I saw so many black people who didn't have anything. Because even at Howard, as much as I gassed up what the people came from, a lot of students at Howard were extremely poor or extremely working class, or didn't come from a lot. And for me, my parents were very, you're gonna figure this out on your own, and they would help me if I needed help, but pretty much I was living off of all the money that I made from dancing and teaching, so I wasn't really getting a lot of money on the side, but just that few extra $100, I was getting, a lot of students didn't have. Now don't be fooled, I wasn't balling, because all that money I had to spend on food and books and everything else like that, and so, most of that money went to something else that I would need for class, so, I had a little bit of money to splurge on, and most of the time I would spend it at the club like an idiot. Seeing people really just not have anything, and seeing how tough, I guess, a lot of black people had it, and as I learned about my history, I just felt horrible. Like, I've been over in this little mountain town, living it up. My dad has a boat, my mom drives a Mercedes, and she's gonna get, and she has her stuff, and even though my neighborhood that I grew up in, we weren't rich, it was kind of a military town, but it was like a nice, little middle class neighborhood. I couldn't fathom the idea that there were some experiences that people who looked like me had that just I couldn't even relate to. Sometimes, in that moment, I felt like I don't even feel black enough. And I'm not saying that being black means you don't have anything, but pretty much I recognize that, okay, your experience is so different and so left field that you can't even relate to half the people who look like you. And so it just made me feel down. So when that lady randomly pulled me and talked to me, that just opened my eyes to everything. And I was like, no, it's not that you can't relate. It's just that we have such a diverse experience that what's presented to the masses is that we can only be a certain kind of person. We can only be a certain kind of black. And so that's when my eyes opened. And then that's when my classes started to make sense. And that's when Pan-Africanism started to make sense. And I really started reading on my own as well. I started following, and looking up people like Fred Hampton and, Malcolm X and stuff, because I didn't know nothing about Malcolm X. What I heard about Malcolm X wasn't good coming from K-12. So, I started reading more and then, doing different things and branching out and, just really trying to understand how the world works. And I feel like that was the beginning of my journey in life, because really between me getting pulled over by those police and me meeting that woman and working at that Boys and Girls Club, or volunteering at that Boys and Girls Club, those are like the three pivotal moments that pretty much changed my perception or my perspective of how the world worked. And I just started seeing things differently. And really, I think volunteering with those kids at the Kingman Boys and Girls Club is really something that pretty much spearheaded what I would end up doing later down the line. I had no idea I'd be working with kids today, or I had no idea I'd be so involved with community affairs today. But, just being in D.C. at the time and seeing that D.C. is such a wealthy city, but then you saw the people that were living there, or a lot of the people who looked like me that were living there, their experience was different than the people who just lived on the other side of 14th Street. I'm like, this is some bullshit. What? So, I think that really jump-started me looking into things differently and being more caught up on current world affairs and wanting to do something, because I was like, you know what? When I look back, I think I had a really pretty fair childhood, and I'm like, everybody should at least have that as their basic standard. At least, you know what I mean? I'm not saying my childhood was better than anybody's, but, I had a childhood where I didn't have to want for anything, at least economically, and I feel like that's an experience every child in this country should have, because this country has too much damn money for that not to be an experience for everybody who walks on these streets, you know what I mean? And so pretty much, I don't want to talk to you guys' ear off, because I could talk about this all day, because I'm like, hell, I ain't even said half the stuff I wanted to talk about. But, my freshman year at Howard was an experience, and really the lesson I learned was, I'm glad I stuck it out, because I really was ready to be like, I was so used to always being applauded for doing any and everything, and so now that I was in a space where no, you're not getting the red carpet rollout, it was a tough pill to swallow at first, and I'm glad that I stuck it out and I didn't quit, because it just, the best was yet to come, and really when I tell you the best was yet to come, it was coming, and that will be in the later podcast. So that is this episode. The next podcast will probably not be about Howard. I'll probably do the next Howard one, a podcast after the next one, just so I don't Howard you guys down. But anyway, that's my podcast, and I think that is about it. By the way, my album, some of this music on here that you're hearing, a lot of it is from my first album. Some of the stuff, if you do have my album, it's some of the B-sides that never made the project, so that's why, because somebody asked, like, I've heard some of these songs and I don't recognize the instrumental. Some of the music that's in here are tracks that didn't make my last album, but the album is Symphonic Euphoria. You can get it on all digital music outlets, or you can also subscribe to my YouTube. Just look up Calvin Michaels, I'll pop up, and that is it. So I will see you 2 Tuesdays from now.